This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, we'll go ahead and get rolling today and call the meeting to order. First order of business is introduction.
Well, I would like to introduce Michaela, or have her introduce herself. So,
Hi, I'm Kayla. I'm the newest transportation planner at the MPO. It's great to meet you all. I'm currently finishing up my master's degree in urban planning while starting this position. Been with the MPO since beginning of July as an intern, and now transitioning into a planner position. So, yeah.
Welcome, and we can do a round of introductions to help you remember all our names at the start.
Oh, me. I'm Daniel Hornpool. I'm with the City of Fort Collins.
I'm Nicole Connor with the City of Portland.
I'm Evan Pinkham with Will County.
Eric Tracy, Limerick County.
Feel free online to jump in and introduce yourself. You so desire.
Hi, this is Tom Moore with the Regional Air Quality Council.
Hi, everyone. This is Katie Guthrie with the City of Loveland.
This is Omar Herrera with the Town of Windsor Engineering.
Any public comment? Anyone online wanting to give public comment? Hearing none, we'll move to the approval of the 2024, August 21st, 2024 meeting minutes.
Move to approve the minutes.
That's it.
All right, you're approved. And then our first agenda item here is the regional air quality updates. And I think we had a presentation that we're going to be sharing with us. Go ahead, Tom, take it away.
It's asking me to ask you to make me a presenter.
Perfect.
Oh, look
Should
at
have
that.
that ability now.
And you see that okay?
Yeah, that's great.
Okay, great. So I have a few slides here that I just want to walk through. I realize, as we've discussed before, that some of the things we do at the RAC and with air quality planning in general are a little outside of many people's day jobs. But I just wanted to hit some highlights and give you a chance to, if you're interested or you or colleagues from your organizations become involved. So as I've been mentioning, we're working on the planning process for the more restrictive ozone standard. And we had a pretty big update today, so I'm going to talk about a couple of things here. So big picture, this slide has a lot of information on it, but it may jibe with what we're all experiencing. You know, a lot more people driving further, population growing. We struggled to be below the appropriate ozone standard at 75 or 70, as you can see from those numbers that string across the top. The point sources and to some degree the mobile sources of air pollution for volatile organic compounds and nitrogen oxides have been going down in many cases at a pretty steep rate. At the same time, we've seen changes and increases in oil and gas production. So this is designed to kind of paint this picture that what we're doing is a complicated task because many variables are changing at the same time. So in the lower, let me just click one more time. In this most recent 4 years is the time frame we're using as the basis to do our planning for what's called the Sirius ozone plan. And these data points that are shown here are the 3-year rolling average. So you can see that it's pretty consistently, high. In the past, we had used 2017 as the basis of of the last full plan we did that we finished last year. And obviously, 2017 is the basis of where we are now. Is quite different than, using a newer time frame for that. So with that in mind, I just want to, you don't have to digest all this now, but there is information that you could look at when the slides get sent out afterwards. We're seeing that the man-made or human-made emissions in the non-attainment area contribute about 15 to 20 parts per billion of the ozone that we see. And we have a detailed apportionment, so you can look at that. That's from 2 or 3 years ago. And then we did a bunch of modeling last year, and we're over that 70 standard that we're planning for now. But last year when we did it, we were just underneath that 75 standard. So we have 3-4 monitoring sites in the region where we're going to have to lower the modeled value. And folks work with models and know that all depends on the inputs. So we're going to need to make the model come out 4 parts per billion lower. That's about a 6% change from what we modeled last year. And so we're just taking that 20 ppb contribution and dividing 4 parts per billion that we need to reduce into it. So that's a 20% reduction in the modeled ozone only a couple of years from now. And that's a very significant change that we're trying to work through and implement. So we're going to try and reduce the NOx and VOC emissions projections by that 20% mark. And we're going to use that. And so I'll be glad to update the group on a regular basis about how we're doing on that work. So I just wanted to show some data from that plan last year. Sorry. This is how the emissions shake out across these big categories, the area sources that are tabulated by county, the non-road sources, the oil and gas sources, on-road, this is vehicles, and then the point, the large industrial and electric generating units. So it's pretty obvious which ones have the largest emissions. Most of these are controlled to some degree. We worked on lawn and garden last year. It's likely we'll try and make some progress on these coatings and consumer products in this coming cycle. There's a bunch of strategies for oil and gas that have, been already adopted that we have to account for, and that the state's proposing some additional strategies. And then a key aspect with this group is what's going to happen with the on-road vehicles. So those are the big areas that we're working in to update these estimates. And this is the part that folks at the NPO are really familiar with, because we use input data from their transportation modeling. So we have to set caps on that for the non-attainment plan that we have to put together. And this is how it breaks out. These are the tons per day of mobile source on-road emissions that are allowed under the plan. And those were based on projecting 2026 from 2017. Now we'll be projecting 2026 from 22. So this budget, these numbers will go down. It'll be a tighter cap. And these new caps will be established, which are not shown here. We don't know what they are yet. Those will be established as part of the planning process. So you're encouraged to participate in that. So we're also going to work on what are called indirect sources, which are trips from cars and trucks associated with large facilities like warehouses, recreation sites, universities, all kinds of different places that attract people to drive to and from. And so we're holding a kind of a work group. We're kicking off a new work group next week on Tuesday. I'll show a little bit more about that. We're going to start to bring in all sorts of different people who are interested in this topic. It's kind of like understanding the subject better and that kind of thing. And we want to build a broader set of stakeholders involved in that. You can click on that link when you get the slides and look at both the agenda and this work group that we're developing. So these are the topics we'll cover. And it's very informational and supposed to allow people to be easily involved. And to do that, you just block this time on your calendar, email my colleague to confirm if you want to come down to downtown Denver and attend in person. We're providing food. So, but you also can join virtually. And this is our address, and you can sign up for the Zoom link there. So I realize I raced through all that. I'll send these slides to the North Front Range staff, and hopefully they'll get distributed to the whole committee, but just letting you all know that we have a lot going on the ozone planning front. So I'll stop there. Thanks very much.
Any questions for Tom? Seeing none, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
On to the next agenda item, the September TIP amendment. Jonathan.
All right, hello everyone. So there are two projects to talk about for the September TIP amendment cycle. The first one is from Loveland. It's adding the new project to Transit Center building reconstruction with $3,967,007 in federal 5339B funding, $251,752 state LOMA funding, LOMA, and $770,000 in local in-kind funding into the fiscal year 25. The second project is for transport, with a new project transport accessibility enhancements with $2,411,550 in federal 5339B funding and $415,450 in local funding, which also goes into fiscal year 25. The 30-day public comment period for this September amendment cycle started on September 11th and will close on October 10th. An equity analysis was provided by both sponsor agencies for both projects and can be found in the TAC packet. The NFRMPO staff has noted no disadvantages with these projects and support adding the September 2024 TIP amendment to the fiscal year 2024 to 2027 TIP.
Any questions for Jonathan? Do we have a motion?
Motion to adopt the September 2.
I'll say it.
All right. And we'll move on to the MMOF call for projects, and Mark is going to lead that item.
Thank you. So over the past several months, North Front Range and staff have discussed with you the different components of the MMOF call, including the schedule, the available funding, local requirements, and all of that information has been incorporated into a guidelines document. Jonathan, can you go ahead and bring it up? We did not receive any comments from anyone in terms of changes, but with that being said, there were a few minor changes we made based upon things that came up between when you guys have reviewed it and the meeting. So we can go forward. Oh, let's go. So the most significant change, which in the scheme of things doesn't really change very much, is the available funding estimates. So the total amount available is the same as was before, at $4.5 million. Ride-NOCO requested a change in the fiscal years for other projects, so they had to shift between years. So that explains the difference in the funding for those particular years. But like I said, other than that, the funding amount remains the same for this call. Can you keep going from John? Schedule hasn't changed. Just a reminder, some important dates. The call opens on the 4th, assuming that council approves the process in the 3rd. Project descriptions, which again is kind of a preliminary review staff does, will be due on the 11th of October. And then the draft applications for CDOT review will be due the 25th of October. And then the actual call will close on the 15th of November. And then hopefully we'll look at taking action on the project's selection in February. Keep going, Jonathan, please. As far as the information in the guidelines, none of it should look new to you. Again, we review the eligible applicants, the different project types, as well as different categories. If you want to go on through, Jonathan. It also covers the minimum requests, which again is the 300,000 for infrastructure projects, and then 25 for transit projects. The maximum, again, as we discussed at the previous meeting, we're looking at 3/4 going towards Category A projects of the funding, and then 1/4 going to Category B. And again, the maximum award per agency would be half of those fundings, so essentially the total amount available per agency would be about 2.2 million. Next page, please. The document then talks about match requirements and the match reduction policy. Just go down, Jonathan. And that table 5 again shows the different communities and what the match rate is, with Garden City having 0%, Evans, Greeley, Loveland, and Larimer County at 25%, and then the rest of the communities at 50%. Next slide. As I mentioned, there's a product description that will be due in October. That's an important step in the process. And then, as you were told before, the CDOT's going to do an application review, and that will be based on who that particular subject matter expert is. As you can see, there's infrastructure projects, there's also electrification and TDM projects represented there, transit, as well as planning and programming projects. The document then talks about the different application requirements. So again, they pertain to the different subject areas. So there's NFRMPO program requirements, funding, requirements related to the RTP, as well as the active transportation plan, and other requirements such as complying with local land use plans, local regional transportation plans, and corridor studies, making sure the project is within the NPO boundary, and then the item there about ITS projects conforming to the region for ITS architecture. The document then goes on to talk about the equity analysis you need to perform, and staff is providing a worksheet to perform that. In terms of submission requirements, again, there's several items here. The first one, CDOT letter of support, which is extremely important. Concurrence, this is if it's on a state highway or ITS project. Then if you have multiple projects, you need to have a project prioritization by category. And then if you have a transit plan, you need to provide a sustainable funding plan. And other additional letters of support are optional for the call. Then I talked briefly about reporting requirements, and those are what CDOT requires of us. Next slide, or next page, please. And then I just provided an example of what the equity analysis worksheet looks like. So that will be provided to you. Next page, please. Then we have a map of the equity index, which again ties into the analysis. Next slide. And then another big section of the document guidelines talks about the scoring process and criteria, including who's a part of the scoring committee, the scoring criteria, and how that breaks down by the different categories. Next page. And then we also have a section which provides references as you work through your application, including the CDOT program overview, the corridors, providing a link to the RTP document, as well as referencing the different performance measures, goals and performance measures. Let's go ahead. And as you can see there, we identify the different performance measures in the RTP. Keep going. And then we also provide some background reference on what the coordinated public transportation, the coordinated plan is, as well as the EJ plan. Next page, please. Then we provide definitions for those that are unfamiliar with the process. And then there's some supportive data in there as well, data information for you. So today, essentially, I'm we're asking you recommend to Planning Council the approval of this guideline document and to open the 2024 call for projects for 2024.
Any questions for Mark? I had one quick one. Who is the score committee? Is it just TAC or is it?
So essentially those people on the scoring committee are those that submitted a project for review.
Each committee gets one vote.
And then any TAC member that's interested, if you didn't see the questions, you can also send it, just one.
As far as the voting,
And we don't.
right,
And see that.
we just facilitate discussion and so.
Motion to adopt the recommendations for the MMOF call.
Give it a second.
I'll say that.
And then we'll do a vote.
Well, we can do this one and then we can go back. And do
Yes. Yes, yeah. So we'll do it. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Hearing none. It's approved. And then I'll go back to the September TIP amendment. We needed to do a vote, so I failed you in my substitute duties here. So all in favor of the September TIP amendment, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right. Thank you, Eric. All right, we're going to move on to our discussion items. With the NFRMPO CDOT traffic congestion performance measures update from Jacob with CDOT. And Jacob with us.
Good afternoon. Would you like for me to share my screen, or did you want to present the slides?
I made you a presenter.
Sorry.
You're
Go ahead.
now, so you should be able to share your own slides.
Okay. Awesome. Are you able to see that and hear me all right?
Yes, we can see you.
Okay, awesome. Good afternoon. Thanks for having some time on your agenda today. My name is Jacob Kirshner, and I'm the Performance Program Manager at CDOT headquarters. Today, I wanted to bring a discussion regarding the national performance measures and the mid-performance period target review that's currently underway right now. Excuse me. And so, to my understanding, I had a brief discussion with the planning director at North Front Range NPO. To my understanding, there are a few new council members. So before we jump into what we'd like to discuss today, wanted to give a quick background of what the national performance measures are. And so the 2021 Infrastructure and Investment Jobs Act, or the IIJA, requires each state to set targets for and report on the progress of performance measures related to the surface transportation system of the U.S. Both state DOTs and MPOs are responsible for setting 2- and 4-year data-informed targets. Those are 2- and 4-year rolling targets, and they're broken up by different performance periods. The first performance period of the national performance measures was 2018 through 2021. We are currently in the second performance period right now, and that's being 2022 through 2025. Our current 2-year targets are for 2023, and our 4-year targets are for 2025. The goal areas for the national performance measures are safety, or what we call PM1, infrastructure condition, PM2, and system performance, PM3. One thing to keep in mind when establishing targets for the national performance measures is that these are not intended to be aspirational targets, and FHWA actually strongly discourages the use of using aspirational targets. This is intended to use the Transportation Performance Management Framework, which relies on states establishing data-driven targets to allow you to inform your investment decisions. As I had mentioned, current performance period is 2022 through 2025, and with the mid-performance period report, the states are evaluated on their performance measures at the mid-performance point, which occurs October 1st, 2024, and we will be evaluated on those 2023 targets. For 2025, there'll be what's called a full performance period report, and we'll be evaluated on those 4-year targets October 1st of 2026. With these performance measures and the mid-performance period, we are evaluated for significant progress determination. And what that means is pretty much, did you achieve your 2-year target? For the most part, for system performance, there are no financial restrictions if you do not meet your performance target. You are just required to develop a report and respond to FHWA on how you intend to achieve your 4-year targets. For those infrastructure condition targets, if you happen to go over 5% of interstate pavements in poor condition, you could go under financial, or you will go under financial restrictions. And for bridge performance measures, if you go above more than 10% on the national highway system in poor condition, you do go under financial restrictions. What I have on this slide is an illustration of the timeline here. That blue line in the middle kind of separates what I was discussing, the first and second performance period. We've jumped into the second performance period. There was a baseline performance period that we have started October 1st, 2022. That's when we established our 2- and 4-year targets. Jumping into that middle box there, October 24, that's where we're at right now, and we'll be working towards that full performance period progress report that I just briefly discussed. For NPOs, they are required to either adopt the state performance targets or establish their own targets for the national performance measures. NPOs have 180 days from the date when a state DOT establishes its performance targets to either adopt those targets or establish their own. CDOT will be submitting the mid-performance period progress report October 1st, which does allow us to reassess our current 4-year targets and evaluate if they still are data-driven targets that we think we can achieve for the 4-year target. And so what we have been doing is assessing our current 4-year targets, and we do plan to adjust some of those performance measures as part of the mid-period progress report. Given that, why we are here today is the NPOs will either need to adopt our adjusted targets or maintain the current 4-year targets they have right now. We will adjust those targets officially October 1st. That starts the timeline for this 180 days, which would be March 30th, 2025. That is a Sunday, so it's kind of more March 28th, 2025, so 178 days. Key things to keep in mind, NPOs are required to work closely with their state agency, that being CDOT and other regional stakeholders, to ensure a collaborative approach to target setting and reporting. Engage in regular coordination with CDOT to ensure that both regional and state targets are consistent with each other. CDOT meets with the planning director when establishing targets to make sure that we are in coordination, and then we also share yearly data to make sure that we're making progress towards those targets we established. And then finally, you want to ensure that regional targets align with the state's national performance measure goals and are consistent with the region's long-range transportation plan and their TIP. For reporting requirements, NPOs must document adopted targets in their RTP and share these with the state for submission to FHWA. Quick background, further details on PM1, PM2, and PM3. PM1 comes out of our CDOT Traffic Safety Engineering branch, and I won't be discussing that much further today, but that does cover the number of fatalities, rate of fatalities, number of serious injuries, rate of serious injuries, and number of non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries. Infrastructure condition is targets for pavement and bridge on the national highway system. And system performance is broken into 3 subcategories, that being system reliability, congestion, and CMAQ. Today, this presentation, the remainder of it, will focus on the traffic congestion performance measures. We do intend to come back with another presentation after we further develop and adjust those targets for infrastructure condition and system performance. However, we did want to provide a briefing on the traffic congestion performance measures. That being, those are joint targets, so they need to be established by CDOT and both North Front Range MPO. Those traffic congestion performance measures are percent of non-single occupancy vehicle travel, so modes other than driving alone. Think carpooling, biking, bus, teleworking is even included in that. And the second is annual hours of peak excessive delay per capita for travel on the national highway system. This slide here provides in detail what the thresholds are for if you're required to establish a joint target for traffic congestion performance measures. There's 2 MPOs in Colorado that are required to establish these targets. That's DRCOG and North Front Range MPO. That being that they have any mainline highways on the national highway system within an MPO's MPO boundary that cross an urbanized area with a population more than 200,000, and that portion of the MPO includes a non-attainment or maintenance area for any one of the CMAQ emission reduction criteria pollutants. And then once again, the 2 MPOs that meet that requirements there, DRCOG and North Front Range MPO. Here are our current targets and performance. We established these October 1st, 2024. For annual hours of peak excessive delay, our current target's 3.8. In 2023, we achieved 3.9, so just above the target there. And our 2025 target currently is below 3.7. For percent of non-single occupancy vehicle, the 23 target was 25.3%. 30.9% were the results for 2023, well above the target there, achieving that, and with a 2025 target above 25.6%. And so what is an importance of this presentation today is CDOT has been evaluating these 25 targets as part of that mid-period progress report. And we do have recommendations on wanting to adjust those targets based on current trends and conditions. We'll start off with the peak hours of excessive delay. How we established this target in the first place is CDOT developed a predictive model to forecast where our peak hours of excessive delay may be in future years. What this used is data set from the National Performance Management Research Dataset, which has travel time segments for every 10th mile segment on the national highway system. We also used population data as well as what we call point data from our travel demand model. Point data looks at different establishments and schools and the volume of people that attend those establishments or school, and creates kind of a buffer of an amount of travel that's expected within that area. And so given all those variables, we developed a predictive model. That predictive model forecasted we would be at 3.8 in 2023. We ended up being fairly close. It was 3.9. However, there was a lot of uncertainty when we did first develop that model. This was kind of peak COVID time. You can see here on the graph, that was that 2.3, 3.0, 3.0. We weren't sure how we would return after kind of restrictions, post-pandemic, traffic patterns would adjust. And so given new data, we reran our predictive model, and it is forecasting that we will be at 3.9 once again for 2025. Our current 2025 target's 3.7, and we would recommend adjusting that up to 3.9 to kind of be in line with what our current performance is. And if you look back to the pre-COVID performance, 2018, 2019, right between 3.7 and 4.1. Any questions regarding peak hour of excessive delay?
I was just curious why we're showing a reduction in 24 with the modeled information. I didn't know if there was a reason behind that or just a little dip in the projected numbers.
Yeah, thank you. That is a kind of a concern when developing this model, and that ties back to we have a limited data set because North Front Range MPO was only recently required to report this information. Our data only goes back to 2017, and so we really have 2017, 2018, 2019 of good data there. Then we have the uncertainty with COVID data. And so the predictive model, for whatever reason, sees a drop in 24, and then it kind of jumps back up to follow trends. And so we do run what we call a cone of confidence on here. And so that orange line, you'll see that's what the model forecasted. We put a kind of a threshold on that, understanding there is some uncertainties there, and so added a 95% confidence interval, which is how we jumped up to that 3.9 there on the upper blue line. But the drop there in 24 is a concern of the model, but we do see the model kind of return to normal results as it forecasted. Jumping in to the next performance measure, so percent of non-single occupancy vehicle travel. Again, this is anyone who's not in a car alone. So biking, bus, telework, walking. And 2022 results were 30.9%, well above that target of 25.3%. Once again, when we developed these targets back in October of 2021, there was a lot of uncertainty on how traffic patterns would adjust. And what we've seen for non-SOV travel is there's been a large increase in teleworking, which has jumped us up from that 2013 through 2019 levels, where you're seeing the Fort Collins urbanized area around 24%, to continued increases year over year, 26% in 2020, 29% in 2021, 30% in 2022. And so what we did to forecast out our 2025 target is we've forecasted current trends of the last 3 years. So the percent change for the number of workers in the Fort Collins urbanized area, the number of workers who drove alone, and the numbers of workers who either carpooled, biked, teleworked to work. And using those variables, we've projected out 2025 performance to be at 31.1% non-SOV travel. And one of our other main factors for wanting to adjust this target is our 2025 target has already been achieved, given we're at 30.9%. There is uncertainties. Traffic patterns could adjust in the next 2 years, but given current trends could extend out, we believe 31.1% is a data-driven target that'll allow us to kind of continue investing in strategies that will reduce the need for single occupancy, drivers in a car. Any questions here on the target recommendation? Hearing none, I'll jump into the next steps slide. And so through September, we'll continue coordinating with North Front Range MPO. That involved us meeting with the North Front Range Planning Director, Becky, last week to discuss these target recommendations, and then coming to the TAC and later the Board of Directors. October 1st, CDOT must submit the mid-period progress report to FHWA, including any target adjustments to the 4-year targets. A small oversight that CDOT had when developing these targets is normally MPOs are given that 180 days to either match the state targets or maintain their current targets. And that brought us out with time to go to the TAC as well as the Board of Directors between now and March. For these joint targets, there was a bit of an oversight here of thinking that we needed to go through the TAC and through the Board of Directors through that October 1st deadline. Given we made it to the TAC, we're not going to make it to the North Front Range MPO Board of Directors by October 1st. And so we've worked with FHWA on potential actions we can take for this. And so one of those being we can maintain current targets, or we can coordinate a formal MPO approval post deadline. What that would look like is we would obtain documentation, perhaps a memo, from the MPOs agreeing to the concept of a target adjustment. We would later then take this to the board of directors to ensure MPO alignment. The kind of one concern with that is it would rely on a positive outcome of the post deadline MPO actions at the board of directors. However, discussions with the North Front Range MPO planning director kind of went towards this is not necessarily a policy change, it's more of a technical change within the performance measures. And we would be hoping that we could obtain documentation that the MPOs agree to the concept of a target adjustment, and then we later take this to the board of directors at a later time, given that CDOT needs to submit these target adjustments by October 1st. Is there any kind of concern with the recommended action there?
What happens if the board of directors doesn't agree? What is the process then? Or if they have comments they'd like to agree?
I don't, well, since they have to be data driven, I don't know that there's much that they can influence the data and how they are looking. In talking with Jacob and the other CDOT staff, it was similar to how we do TIP amendments, where the council meeting is typically a week or so, or a day, it's before the end of the public comment period, so it's always pending no negative public comment. So this could be pending no negative, no disapproval, or we can find a way to word it, but I don't know that this would be contentious simply because one, it's data driven, and two, it doesn't really, it's not something we can impact. It is a state target, so I think it will be okay. It was approved the last time we did this, so yeah. I don't see any more questions in the room. No questions online. Do you have anything else for us, or?
Nope. So hearing that, I will work with Becky to kind of document a memo to agreeing to the concept of target adjustments. CDOT will submit these target adjustments to FHWA on October 1st, and then we will be coordinating fairly soon to discuss on those target adjustments to the PM2 infrastructure condition, as well as the PM3 system performance targets. With that, we do have the 180 days. We have 6 months to handle that. We had the hindsight to think of our timeline for that. So we won't be on a rush for those targets, but appreciate the feedback and the time today. And that's all I had for presentation.
Thank you so much. All right. We'll move on to our next discussion item. The NFRMPO 10-year priority list update. Okay.
Yes, so as we discussed last month, went to the council meeting earlier this month to talk about the recommendation from NFRMPO staff, as well as the TAC, that we have another in-person workshop to discuss and prioritize the projects on the 6 priority corridors, similar to the workshop we had in 2020, January 2020. So the 6 priority corridors are I-25, US 34, US 287, US 85, and then state highways 392 and 14. So projects that are in the RTP and in the model are the projects that are going to be on that list, as well as the TIP, which is the first 4 years of the RTP. So we want to, council agreed we should have an in-person only workshop. So we're looking to hold a 2-hour in-person workshop. I've had several offers of locations to host this. I think the location is determined on what date we select. So TBD on that. I will send out a doodle poll probably in early October with dates for January. I don't want to send it out too far ahead, but I don't want to send it too late. So we're looking at January as being that time frame, January 2025. So I will be compiling an updated list of the projects that we have to make sure that there isn't anything that has already been funded and we can take out, like the Colt station that received funding, or the transit center, I should say. So things like that we know for sure have received funding and are moving forward, we will take out. Things like the Greeley project that had been flagged last time, that will stay in because it was only partially funded. So please don't worry about projects that have received some funding, but they're not fully funded. But that is something we need to have TAC members review the projects, make sure that the correct project, make sure the limits are correct, the costs are correct, the years are correct, make sure all of that is good. And if there's been partial funding, please note that in the comments. There will be a comment column there as well. And I will send that out in October as well. And then I will probably ask for 2 to 3 week turnaround on that, depending on how big the list is. I will make it on that. And then I will send it out to all TAC members, even if you don't have a project on the list, just so you are aware of what is on the list. So, but with that, if there's any questions, otherwise look for even more emails from me. So.
I will say one thing that we're finding with the US 34 TAC is that there are philosophies have changed a bit, and there are more multimodal projects than were maybe on the list the last time we did this prioritization. So it's okay to add additional projects and things that were on the list.
If there are elements of a project that was already, may already be on the list or is already in the RTP, that needs to be in the RTP, so it's already passed formally. Yeah. So, but the way that we had it last time is we had roadway projects, we had 3 tiers of those, we had transit projects, 3 tiers of those, and then non-motorized. If there's a different way we want to structure the list, that would also be good feedback as well prior to the workshop. So if anyone has any thoughts on that, since we are trying to have more multimodal projects, maybe there's a better way to show those. But if they can also be done in phases or in pieces, that's also good to know, since we know that it's very unlikely to get full amount of funding to do the whole thing. But if you can do pieces of it, maybe we can do that one. So.
Any questions for Becky? There's somebody. Oh. Yep. Okay. Thank you. We'll move on to the 2025 active transportation plan update. There's a handout in the packet for that one.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. It's nice to physically be back at a TAC meeting. I haven't been to a TAC meeting physically since April, so it's nice to be back with you all. And I'm here to give an update on the 2025 active transportation plan. Next slide, please. Just a little bit of a reminder on the timeline for our plan. We are still anticipating that it will be adopted in Q1 of 2025, assuming nothing major comes out from our ATC visioning and plan drafting and all that jazz. So we are currently in 2 phases. So we are still looking at existing condition and active transportation facilities data. We're making some progress on that. And then we are in our ATC visioning. I will discuss more on that later. Next slide, please. So as a reminder, this is from the Active Transportation Plan Outreach Strategy. As a result of the 2022 Public Involvement Plan, the NPO, we complete a outreach strategy prior to us beginning our planning process. So this was created in early October 2023. So I just want to come and provide an update on where we are with the outreach strategy. We are completely done with goals and problem statement. We are mostly done with existing condition and active transportation facilities. We are still updating our facilities data with the information that we received from the 2023 RTP that we just completed. And then we'll be moving into regional active transportation corridor visioning, which includes discussing and identifying potential projects along RATCs, which we will do in the individual meetings that you all have received emails from me this morning on, and also creating vision plans for the RATCs. And then we will be moving into closing the feedback loop. So connecting back with people we've engaged with so far and being sure to address any comments that come along the way, and also evaluating how the plan went once it is adopted and how the outreach strategy went and making notes for future planning efforts. Next slide, please. So the action adjacent survey, we have, as of yesterday, 262 responses, or 3 in Spanish. We've seen responses from 19 zip codes, and only, I believe, 1 and 2 are outside the MPO boundary. And it is open until next Friday. Next slide, please. So this is just a visualization of where we begin responses from. Usually they come with numbers, but ArcGIS decided we don't do that anymore. Spent 2 hours trying to figure it out. It wouldn't work. But we are finding that most of our responses are coming from Fort Collins, but we are receiving a sizable amount from the Greeley-Evans area, and then some from Loveland, Windsor. So not as geographically diverse as I was looking for, but I still think this is a most representative data set, and we will use this data to improve the plan. Next slide, please. So now we're just going to go through some of the survey response we've gotten thus far. So this is the question of I would ride a bicycle more if, and the top 5 responses we received is there were more physical barriers between bikes and automobiles, there's more space separating bicycles from automobiles, there are more off-street trails or multi-use paths, motorists drove more respectfully, and there's more secure bike parking near high destinations. So what we're finding so far is not particularly surprising, but we are finding that people are not very comfortable riding their bikes close to vehicles and like to have some sort of separation, whether that be a barrier or a completely off-street path. And then secure bike parking, that has been raised as a concern as well. Next slide, please. So this one is similar, but it's asking, would you walk or roll more if, and roll is referring to those who use wheelchairs and things of that nature. This is not referring to scooters. That is more for bikes. We added that to try and make that as accessible as we can. And we are finding that the top 5 responses are, it didn't take so long to walk / follow my destination. There are safer crosswalks. There are more off-street sidewalks or off-street walking paths. Sidewalk condition was better, and there's more street lighting after dark. Again, this is not particularly surprising. Next slide, please. So in the survey, we do ask some questions about transit because we are looking at the relationship between active transportation and transit, and especially how we can use active transportation to fill the first and last miles for transit. So for this, we asked, I would take transit more if, and we top 5 responses where there are more frequent service, more routes, it didn't take so long, there's later evening service, and there was safe and reliable bike parking. That last one was a little surprising to me that ranked as high, and I think that is indicative of a desire for there to be more bike parking, and that suggests that people may be more willing to ride transit if they feel safe leaving their bikes at the stops. So next slide. So then we asked a question about, do you have any additional comments pertaining to active transportation? I realized I put this right after the transit comment, so we received a lot of comments on transit, which is great, not helpful for this plan, but it's just good to know in general. So these are the ones I filtered out that are bike ped related. I did learn for next time or next survey to be a little more mindful where I put this question. That did not cross my mind until I saw the responses. So overall things that we're finding are more traffic calming elements on bike routes, which is similar to results we got with the bike question. More dedicated bike ped infrastructure, include bike ped elements in all future projects or projects where it is applicable. Lots of comments on reckless drivers not feeling safe due to that, and then better bicycle facilities at transit stops and on buses. We did find people not only answer that in the survey, they also put that in the comments as well. Next slide, please. So we're shifting from the survey to some of the work projects that we've done so far. This is referring to bicycle level traffic stress, and that's referring to how comfortable is a corridor to ride a bike on, with 1 being comfortable for anyone and 4 being not very comfortable at all. So most models do not have a category for 5. For whatever reason, that is part of our model. So that is abnormal, and I do not believe we have any segments that are categorized as 5. The -1, that is for segments where there are no bicycles allowed. So that top table, the bicycle facility type definitions, this is pulled from our model, and this is how our model determines what type of facilities are on a corridor. So our model does not differentiate between an off-street path and a protected bike lane. As far as the model is concerned, they function the same. So that's just some information on how it is coded in our model. So on bicycle level traffic stress, as we'll see here, we're gonna have a series of maps because we're looking at doing it at a regional level. And there are some restraints to it. So because it is an output from the regional travel demand model, it only assigns a level of traffic stress to corridors that are in the model. So local roads are not in this, but many times local roads would be a 1 or a 2 since it is low traffic and low speeds. It is also dependent on projects that are in our model. So if there are bike ped projects that are not in our model, it will not be reflected into these maps. And our model considers bicycle facility type, number of lanes, traffic speed, and traffic volumes. We have no way of addressing reckless driving. That's not something the model can do. So that's another consideration when looking into these maps, especially if there is a result that looks a little wonky or does not pass the smell test. So I did this for base year 2019, because that will be the base year of this plan as well, since this will be the action transportation component of the 2050 RTP. So I did it for 2019, 2030, 40, and 50. Next slide, please. So I just wanted to kind of show what the maps look like. We will be uploading these to ArcGIS online so that people can zoom in and do more confirmation. But this is just kind of show what it looks like and just give a brief overview. So the coloring is a little strange on this. It did not look like this on my computer screen. So that jarringly bright green is level of traffic stress 1. The slightly other way around. The very, very bright green is 2. The slightly less bright green is 1. Orange is 3, and then red is 4. So this is for base year 2019. Next slide, please. So this is 2030. One thing I initially see is a lot more orange pop up and off as green, which suggests that our level of traffic stress overall as a region is going down from 2019 to 2030. Next slide, please. 2040 looks similar. Next slide. And 2050 also looks similar. So overall, we're not seeing drastic changes on a regional level from 2019 to 2050, but this is also on a huge scale. If we were to zoom in more on local communities, we would likely see a lot more changes corridor by corridor. But overall, we do not see huge changes. And again, this is only roads that are in our model. So this does not count for roads that are not in our model. So before I move on, are there any questions on these maps before we go on to RATC visioning?
Just a quick question. Did you use planning efforts that happened in the municipalities to help set that level of the LOS?
Yes, so whatever was included in the model is included in this. So that's another caveat. If there were projects that came online but are not in our model or are not part of our RTP, it will not be represented in this, which is all something that is important to take into account as we look at these maps. And we are anticipating these maps being used as more of a reference. So for local community who did not have the capacity to do this themselves, wants to look at a corridor to see how this perform over from here to 2050, it can be used for that. Because of those concerns with it not being represented due to projects that are not in the model, we did have concerns to use it for anything else that's tied to funding. So we're just using this as more of a point of reference in the plan that people can use. All right, are there any other comments? All right, next slide, please. So RTC visioning. So you all have received an email from me either today or yesterday to schedule a meeting. So what we'll be doing is I'll be meeting with each community to discuss the RITCs in your community and discuss visioning. So this is just an example of what the corridor profiles look like. So we look at trail crossing needs, strategic local connections, proposed alignments, and then corridor and areas and conditions. So in these meetings, I'm anticipating, actually next slide, please. I think I see that on this slide. I do not, but have it top of my head. So we'll be discussing RITC alignments. Are the current alignments still look probable, or are there any updates we need to do? We will discuss known projects along the corridors, and then also strategic local connections. And these are connections to get residents who live near the trails to the trail. And these are corridors are not RATCs. And if there is a strategic local connection that's identified in our plans, it is eligible for NPO funding. So for these meetings, I do not anticipate every question will be answered, especially some communities have up to 5 or 6 RATCs, and it's just not feasible to get all the answers. So I'm anticipating that these meetings are a starter conversation, and then there will be follow-up, whether that be additional meetings or communication via email. So it is not the end of the world if we don't get through every RATC. It can be hard to gauge how much discussion there are due to completion and other factors, like projects we were not aware of when this plan was adopted in 2021. So next steps, we will further analyze by school level traffic stress maps and doing it by region significant corridor. We will begin community meetings. So that will be RATC vision planning. I will begin drafting up the RATC corridor profiles. We will continue to, well, that last line's a little out of date because we are done with our outreach season. And then continuing to draft the plan and really move into typing up the real meat of it. So to reiterate, we still anticipate, barring something happening between now and adoption with RATC visioning, that this plan should be adopted by Q1 of 2025. And I think that's all I have. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Drew?
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Drew. All right, we'll move on to the NOCO Bike and Ped Collaborative. We've got a written report in your packet. Regional transit agencies. Anyone have a verbal report? Anything you'd like to share? The mobility updates are a written report in your packet as well. Oh, did Corey have something? Sorry. No. Go ahead, Corey.
Yeah, I just have a couple updates to share this afternoon. You can find more in the Mobility Committee minutes as well. Just wanted to share that the Ride NOCO call center had its busiest month ever since opening in 2021. In August, we had 62 calls. And just for some context, usually our monthly average is between 20 and 25. So a huge increase in calls as word about the program continues to get out. And then also just wanted to share that Via Mobility has increased service for their Weld County project by adding a third bus onto the road, as well as a new community, Milliken. And just wanted to share some stats for the last year and a month of that service. 168 registered riders, including someone as old as 96 years old, and over 2,000 one-way trips. So really great to see the community and members embrace that transportation service.
We have the September Planning Council meeting summary draft, written report in your packet, and the Mobility Committee updates, also written report in your packet. And we'll roundtable. Start. Dan,
Sure. We were successful with a Safe Streets and Roads for All planning and demonstration grant for 2024 that includes a code audit that updates or that strives to update Lucas standards with some of the recommendations that were made in our active modes plan so that we can have development capital projects aligning for our active modes improvements. We also included a demonstration project along Lake Street on the south side of CSU to install separated bike lanes, as well as do a demonstration of some intersection closing as well. And then, some study of the Harmony corridor for bicycle or separated bicycle facilities along that as well. So,
I don't have any more updates.
I also don't have any more updates.
I do not have the update.
I do not have any updates.
I don't have any updates this month. The next month I'll quite a few, I think, so. A
Exciting.
lot of stuff coming up.
Teaser.
So yeah, we'll teaser for next month.
We also were successful in getting a planning and administration grant for the city of Loveland, so we'll be excited to get that process started. TAC and US 34 is still moving quickly. We're hopeful to get the project done for winter this year, so they're about to flip over to the other side of TAC. So sorry for anyone that commutes through there. 34 is getting great timing, but TAC is closed currently. So that's all I had. Anyone online have any updates they'd like to share? Dee, go ahead.
Hey everybody, hope you can hear me okay. I just wanted to make sure you guys, if you haven't had a chance to be a part of the Strategic Highway Safety Plan, there's a virtual meeting, stakeholder workshop session October 1st. If you guys need that invite, please reach out to Josie or myself. I'm also going to put something really handy in the chat for everybody. You can go in if you don't have time to attend this virtual session. Please go on and at least make some comments. That would be greatly appreciated. So let me get this link in there for you. And that's about all I had. I wanted to make sure you guys are very aware of that going on, which I know you are, but I gotta talk about it.
Thanks, Dee. And we'll go ahead and put that link in the meeting minutes as well. Anyone else? I see a hand. Sorry. Nothing else, Dee. Okay. Any public comment before we close? Seeing none, I think we are adjourned.